Okay, so I'm very pleased to be here.
I'll just jump in. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today. This is the Student Undergraduate Research Experience. I'm Merle Massey. I'm the coordinator of undergraduate research initiatives at the University of Saskatchewan. And with us today is Gina Koehn, and she is from the University of Saskatchewan Library. Gina, I never know if I've pronounced your last name correctly, so I'm going to pass it over to you. You can introduce yourself, say your name correctly, because I don't know if I ever do, and we'll go from there. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Awesome, thanks, Meryl. You did a good job on my name. It's Gina Koehn. So, excuse me. I'm very pleased to be here with you guys today. I get to talk on a topic that is near and dear to me, and this is work habits, more specifically personal productivity. And I've done lots of research. I've used some of the techniques and strategies, and I am a lifelong learner. So I've fallen on my face, I've fallen off the bandwagon, and gone away from strategies I've done and then got back up and tried again. And every time I try again and learn a skill, it gets better. So in my workshop today, I'm going to cover, I've divided it in kind of three main sections. And this is deciding what one should do, how to do it, and thinking about creativity and when you do it. I am a learning specialist from Student Learning Services, and my area of support is learning strategies. Okay, I will open the poll question. So hopefully you can see the poll window on your screen, and I will open it now. So if you can just take, oh, let me see. All right, I guess first of all, can you see the poll? Oh, I see some submissions. So I'll just give you a minute or so, minute or two to complete the poll. Okay, just 10 more seconds for anyone not done.
I'm glad that the students were able to figure out how to do the poll. Me, I'm like, nothing's kind of up and up for me, but that's just, could be me.
No, I hear you. I'm good at holding polls, but I've never answered one. So, okay, I'm just going to close the poll now, and we'll take a look at the results in just about 15 seconds. So these are some of the strategies and the tools in the first question that I will be covering today. And my goal really is to provide you with concrete strategies and some tools that you can take away and try and maybe use in your own practices. Okay, so the results. Eat the frog, only 4% no. Shiny penny, 8% no. Seinfeld strategy, 0. Analysis paralysis, 8%. Monkey in the monk mind, no one. Grit, 17, and growth mindset by Carol Dweck is more popular and known. And I see kind of a normal distribution. About 8% feel their time management skills and productivity are great. Many people have said needs improving, and this isn't surprising. We're in education and we are all about learning. So those are those. And what do you do when you procrastinate? Majority, check up on social media. The next is work on less important tasks. Yes, I do that one very much. Visit with friends and family and binge watch shows. So yeah, thank you so much for your honesty and for completing the polls. Okay, so just getting started, I guess. There is a researcher, Randy Pausch from Carnegie Mellon, who has passed away. And he was very much into following your dreams and making the best use of your time. And he would talk to students. I think he wrote a book and give lectures on that topic. So the one thing that we can control in our lives is how we use our time. At times we don't have much control in other areas. So just like the world now, there's uncertainty that pops up. So we need to adjust what we're doing and can always change what that is or set direction. Number one, again, this is deciding what we should be doing, and it's own your time. Again, that follows on the fact that it is our time to make use of. How do we direct ourselves? This is talking about goals, so we know what we want to accomplish. I'd like to say that without goals, we're not sure what we should be doing, so making a decision about how to act. And the other aspect is not being able to evaluate or assess your time. So you may be wondering, am I moving towards, am I doing the right things? Am I being productive? Am I helping people? And without those goals stated very well, it's difficult to take that kind of fulfillment in. So we don't have a direction. I also have a picture of a lighthouse. This is very important to me because I think all of us hit a wall at some point in our lives. And life is challenging, life is difficult. We're almost walking in a fog or in a dense kind of grassy area, and we don't really know what to do. Something has struck us. And so the goals can really act as a lighthouse. When you're lost, you can say, okay, my goal is to focus and complete a degree. That's what I'm going to do despite these challenges. First thing you need to do, really, when making any kind of change is to consider what it is that you need to change, a little bit more detail. So in getting started, to pay attention and to change your productivity strategies is the need to do some logging of your time. So you can see a daily time tracker there. Another interesting exercise is, if you haven't done it, is how do you spend your 168 hours a week? And in this one, you put down for different aspects of your life, how many hours you spend on that. And in the end, excuse me, in the end, it'll tell you how many free hours you have. So things like sleeping, eating, this one's got attending labs, lectures geared towards students. One of the students that had provided some feedback after doing this said that they freed up 2 hours of time on Netflix. So when they looked at it, they said, okay, well, I have enough time there. They needed to increase their study time throughout the week. So they got 2 hours back, and we're very pleased. There are also apps and systems that we can use to help us automate, digitally manage our time. And there's a couple of different time trackers in this one. There's passive time trackers. This is just one example. I follow a YouTuber who's into personal productivity as well as learning. He's done a lot of videos on reading, time management. His name is Thomas Frank. So he's just put up a couple examples on a webpage. You can search his name and apps if you want his listing. So an example is rescue time, and this is where you're entering the time you spend into certain activities. So maybe the time you spend in research, the time you spend in development, the time you spend exercising. And then Toggle is an active time tracker, and this is one that can track your activities on your phone and on your computer. I'm not sure about on my iPhone. I have a setting that it can track what I'm doing on my phone, and then it makes reports. It's a bit freaky, but it's useful. So jumping into some strategies of how to direct your efforts, Angela Duckworth, a researcher, looked at successful people and what characteristics do they have in common. And so what she found after looking at industry and government and even schools is that it's not IQ or those kind of talents like your smartness. It's determination. It's determination that you have to achieve a goal. And what we all need is perseverance to get through the challenges that we might face. So that was her work. Grit is known as the determination and perseverance. And that is the one common quality. As a student, as a researcher, again, these are some things that you can, consider and practice. So in her work as well is talking about that goal element. So you're determined to do something and you persevere, and these are the goals. She talks about needing to know, or the benefit, I guess, of knowing your ultimate goal. And that is a high level goal that can guide you in kind of a broad aspect of what you do in life. So you can see there's a low, mid, and top level goal. It's the top level goal that, again, can tell you what to do in terms of, excuse me, sorry, what to do in terms of your kind of daily or weekly goals, your mid goals, and your top. So for me, in my past lifetime, a while ago, a goal of mine, one of my primary goals was actually to provide a good life and support system for my children. To do things like giving them those opportunities young to experience life and to make their own decisions. So everything that I did, really, my work, my finances fed into that goal, family time fed into that goal, visiting with relatives. For me now, my children are older. One of my goals, I guess, is work related, and it's doing what I'm doing now. It's to provide the best support I can for students and learners, and to empower people to take on those strategies, to learn that knowledge and achieve their own goals. So everything I do now, I weigh it against that. And sometimes people will call it as a secret weapon. And so this is something, you know, when you're asked to do something. I'm going to use the example where a friend asks you to help them move. If you're busy and you're really mindful of your time for whatever reasons, you know, will that accomplish my goal of empowering students? No. So I actually may say, I'm sorry, I can't do that. At times in your life, goals change, and so does the environment. So you may stop doing a goal, it's flexible, and add a different goal as you go along. So the idea here is you need to flex. Without your top level goal too, you can feel like you're accomplishing different things in life. Your education, your job, social connections, just different elements. And yet they just feel like kind of islands. They don't kind of join up nicely to your goal. So it's not as easy to connect them in. You may have heard of well-developed, well-designed goals, and these are specific goals. I'm going to go over the principles right now and just give you an example, because it is very important to be specific with what you're doing so you can assess it. So SMART goals, and you may have heard of this. S stands for specific. This isn't giving in detail of what you want to accomplish, and maybe a little bit of direction of how you want to accomplish it. Measurable, you need to be able to see how much progress you've done and if you've actually achieved that goal. Attainable means it may be a bit challenging or aspirational, but you know you can do it. Relevant means it applies to what you're trying to achieve. It takes you closer. And time bound. This is a start and an end date to what you're doing so that you know it has a completion. All right, so an example of a vague goal will be, I will take some time to read those research papers later. If you imagine telling your boss this, or telling, you know, a child, delegating, or a colleague, take time to read those research papers later. That isn't very specific. So a SMART goal might look like, I will read research papers, X and Y, this evening, and be ready to discuss the findings at our group meeting tomorrow morning. You can see this is a lot more specific goal. And doing this in your education, for instance, if you have a study session, being very specific, I am going to read chapter 1 of my biology textbook in the next hour. That's going to give you more satisfaction and direction for that work you're doing. I'll just pause a second and see if anybody has any questions for me.
Every time I see this presentation, I think of something new. This is Merle. For me, what I got out of that is that you can have a big goal. Like I want to land a research job with a professor. I don't have one this summer, but I want to land one. So then break that down. What would I need to do in order to do that? And sort of that high level goal, and then breaking it down to what's manageable, what's doable. That's what I heard. Am I on the right track, Gina?
Yeah, you absolutely are.
Excellent.
Fantastic, Merle. Yeah. 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 So you know what to do next. And then in times of trouble, you can also, when you can't really think and are overwhelmed, as Merle said, you can think, okay, this is what I need to do first, second, and third.
Do you recommend that people write these down?
Sure.
Whatever it is, what their big goal is, and then yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And taking that the step further, what you might anticipate is having those goals visible, whether you have them on your phone in your notes or you put them on your wall at your desk, um, close to your door going out. Those are the things that can help you with motivation, with reward as well.
Love it.
Yeah,
Thanks, Gina.
thanks. Okay, so you have some goals now, and the next thing you really need to know is what you should be doing. What's most important to do first? So if you have a lack of priorities, again, you won't really know about whether you're taking yourself closer to a goal. It is also kind of an ineffective use of time. So every time you go to do something in the afternoon, what is it that I need to do? What do I need to do next? So it's just inefficient in how you process your time. And one thing that I don't think I thought of as much in life when I was younger is that every time I did something, there was some kind of an opportunity cost that I was missing. For me, when I was working very hard and had children, I was the worker. I worked during work. I worked when I got home in the evenings, especially when I started my career. Um, I did my master's in artificial intelligence and computer science. And then I went in to be an instructor for the next probably 10 to 12 years. So I had to work hard. And what I was missing is time with my family. I would take my computer, my laptop to soccer games for a while. My kids still remember. And then I realized that balance, when I put that opportunity in there, it helped me be more productive and happier. One of the tools to use to evaluate your time or to kind of contextualize it would be the Eisenhower Priority Matrix. And this is a system that looks at two factors of what you're doing. One is how important it is to you, and the other is how urgent. Just looking at a couple of quadrants then. The top left, which is both urgent and important, these are things that you have to do right away. You have an exam tomorrow, you need to study it. You have to have some results finding in an experiment this summer to report to your manager. You have to do that right away. Someone needs to go to Mediclinic, and immediately that's something you need to do. The next quadrant, which is really important, is important but not urgent. This is where our time now, when you're spending your time at home and you need to structure it, you'll have things maybe that we just don't do. So if you don't have a deadline for conducting your research to do your white paper, if we don't set a deadline, what can happen is we do what is most pleasurable to us. We're human. So we do maybe not what is needed. So that's a quadrant where you schedule your stuff into your schedule and you make sure you put it in. Bottom left, not important but urgent. Try to delegate that to someone else if you can. And the bottom right is not urgent and not important. This might be checking social media, going out on a Friday night to party when you have something due on Monday. I'm not saying don't do these things because they do achieve a goal. As you can guess, it helps with your personal balance and wellness. Another tool is to create a daily schedule. Again, this is kind of like a monthly, weekly, and daily schedule. And on the left, you can see putting a few tasks on a day, not too many. Some people say 3 main tasks or 5. And then what I've done is used asterisks to say which is the most important after. And the more number the asterisks mean those are the things I need to do first. Another thing is picking your priorities would be learning to say no. This is something that many people, including myself, have a difficulty doing. If someone asks us for some kind of a favor or request and we can't do it, we can say no gratefully. So you don't have to say yes to anything. A good approach to that really would be to let someone know that it is interesting. It is something that you may be wanting to do in the future. You just can't do it now, given time or whatever. And then another good thing to do is to give a suggestion right away in that response about maybe a solution. So I'm sorry, I can't do that presentation next week. However, I think maybe X colleague may be interested. When we accomplish a goal, we get a happiness hit, hormones. So we're pleased and happy. When we think about our goals, actually, this is also a time that also invokes those same feelings of happiness. So visualizing your goals will also bring on the happiness and the happy hormone. Okay, we're moving to how to do it. So these are some strategies of, again, how you use your time, how you accomplish what it is that you want to do. I'm going to start with the potter and the pot. So number one, how to do it, the potter and the pot. Starting with a story. There's a story about a teacher who is teaching some of their pupils how to build pots. And he divides the group into two main different groups. One is to spend the week and develop the perfect pot, the best one they can do. The other group is told to just make as many pots as they can throughout the week. So what he found is that the group that did quantity pots, those are the pots actually that had some of the, the winners, some of the best pots that are there. And which is, I don't know, kind of surprising because someone is spending their time perfecting it. What's going on under the scenes here is that by doing iterations, by creating something and then seeing how it worked, or maybe even better, its shortcomings of the process, building another one, each time you do this, you're learning. So you have many learning opportunities. Some of our best learning times, you can guess, is times of great challenge or even failure, where it's very obvious, or it becomes obvious, what we did wrong. So we can avoid that. So this is kind of the quantity argument. An example for me, where I try to be a perfectionist, and I'm human, so there's many instances that I'm working on in life, is I paint rocks, and one is a mandala on a rock. And what I can do, you can see the detailed view here, is continually wipe off the paint that I'm doing until all the dots are perfect. And that's kind of a waste of time, because if you look on the left, that rock looks good enough. So consequences in our society, we will value perfectionism. We'll value someone trying to make the best product or thing and have those standards. One example is Steve Jobs, and he is known for, of course, his innovations and the success that he's had in life. He came up with a computer known as the Next computer at one point in time. And one thing that he required from his development team is that the inside of the computer was also painted the same color as the outside of the computer. So it's just one example of kind of the standards he had. Truthfully, perfectionism can bring on anxiety, it can bring on frustration, it can elevate your stress. So it can lead to all these things that are not productive and don't lead us to a helpful and fulfilled life. So a few strategies. I don't think, Seinfeld approach. I don't think many people knew what that was. Jerry Seinfeld is a comedian and a producer and an actor. You can see him in the back window with President Obama there. And what he did early in his career is he committed to writing one joke every day. He had a calendar, he would write a joke and cross off that date. So what he was doing is, again, that quantity argument. And in how he described it and what he did is he didn't measure the quality of the jokes. It was brainstorming and putting them out and eventually coming up with a suite of good jokes. The other example is 365 days. And this is a YouTuber again. And he decided to take one picture for 365 days each day. And when he went to make his portfolio of pictures, of photos to use, in fact, one of those photos came from that exercise. Okay, so another thing as a perfectionist you can try to do is to estimate how long something may take you. And I guess what we know is many times we need to multiply by 1.5 times the estimate that we gave. So if we have a project and we estimate it's going to require 2 hours, we probably need to set apart 3 hours for that task. We have trouble, all of us, I guess, estimating the amount of time that tasks require. So don't feel bad if your first guess really doesn't represent it. So that 2 hours was way off base. It's difficult. And what we know again is that with practice, if you've done something before, it's easier to do. But do the best you can to get going. Another thing that can happen in life is that if we always do something, if we always strive for perfectionism and we never let our guard down, we're always trying to be perfect. Truthfully, we haven't given our chance to think about what happens, how do we feel if we're not perfect. So some suggestions is, and this is pretty radical, is to not hand in an assignment. Hopefully it's a low grade one. And see what happens, see how you feel. Was it devastating? Compassion. Again, we're not going to achieve our goals necessarily to the standards we like. Give yourself a break. Go gently on yourself. If you can't achieve your goal, go gently on yourself if you get into a circle where you are trying for perfectionism. You haven't beat it yet, and so you're doing that. It's okay. We're all human and we share that condition. Think about what you might say to a friend. You didn't get that project done in 2 hours? What gives? Now, you wouldn't say that, so try not to say it to yourself. Another interesting idea that a student actually said this year when coping with the pandemic challenges is if something isn't important in 5 years, don't spend more than 5 minutes worrying about it. That's maintaining a perspective. Moving on to the next one. This is number 4 of how to do it. The devil is in the details. We'll start with an example again. It's the story known, and a couple of you knew, I think, as A Beautifully Shaded Penny. This is the book written by a co-founder of Pixar. So the other thing, I guess, just to start it off, is that the penny on a nightstand is never what you'll see. There's a phenomena that producers at Pixar call the beautifully shaded penny. It refers to the fact that artists who work on our films care so much about every detail that they will sometimes spend days or weeks crafting. So just as a penny in an animation sitting in a nightstand, you can't see it. This is what happens sometimes, I guess, in our lives. The follow-up example is for Monsters, where Boo is grabbing a CD out of the collection, and all of those CDs kind of tumble. Truthfully, the staff that were animating, they were responsible for constructing those CDs, did 90, I think it was 90 different cases of those CDs with the details on each case. So there was a lot of time spent there. And the result, none of those were seen, only the one that was picked up. So consequences of fixating on details or spending a lot of time on detailed levels is you're putting a lot of time in for limited kind of output. There's what's known as analysis paralysis. And again, this is something where you are analyzing, doing something too in-depth that is not needed. And in fact, it hurts you. So an example here, a colleague mentioned this as well as I found this as well. When conducting some research, it's not letting go. So needing to find all the research out there that concerns whatever I am trying to accomplish. I suspect that there are others out there that get caught as well in the research trap, not only to improve a project, but also because you want to learn. I put, can it be a waste of time? That's harsh. What I would like to say is that it's maybe not so productive if it's not helpful for you. May have heard of the 80-20 rule. So Microsoft noted that by fixing the top 20% of the most reported bugs, 80% of the errors and crashes in a given system would be eliminated. So this is, it's shown basically that 80% of a project you're doing can be really accomplished in 20% of your time. And that last 20% of that project, trying to perfect it, trying to get that mark of 88 up to 95 or whatever, requires a lot of your time and effort. You need to decide whether it's pays off or not. One of the conclusions that the author, the co-founder of Pixar really said is ask if you don't know, talk to your manager, see what the expectations are. If you don't want to talk to your manager or can't, talk to a mentor, talk to a peer and say, this is what I'm doing. You think I'm on the mark? Okay, so before I go, I again will pause and see if any questions came to mind during the last couple of sections.
So Gina, it's Eileen. Hi.
Hi, Eileen.
Um, so you talk about like learning to let stuff go and not focusing on the minutia and accepting that sometimes you won't do things perfectly. Um, but the thing is like for me, for example, I'm trying to get into the honors program so that I can do my master's in conjunction with my degree. And unfortunately, that means I sometimes fixate on my marks. Now, if you have goals that you want to accomplish that are force you to fixate on certain things, how can you learn to let stuff go but know that you have to achieve a certain benchmark in order to be eligible for something? Do you know what I'm trying to ask? I'm sorry if my question
Yeah.
seems convoluted.
No, I think I do know, Eileen. Thank you for the question. It is unfortunate in some ways that we have grades in our classes. The education system, Salesforce has numbers, very strict numbers. So we have these things, and I can just say it's sort of the reality we have. I think that, you know what, the best we can do is to keep healthy, to be mindful of when, you know, things are going off the rails. So really the basics of life, make sure you're doing those: eating, sleeping, exercising. And something else that I wanted to say, and I don't think it's going to come to me necessarily.
Gina, can I hop in and just
Yeah.
that's a really great comment, Eileen. Thank you so much for making it. And I know, you know, it's a competitive world here at the university, and that is the way it is. And it's true in that when people are looking at scholarships and honors programs and so on and so forth, they are paying attention to marks. But one of the things that my office is working on very specifically is a pretty consistent reminder that researchability, so that's things like an honors program or a master's program, actually has more to do with where Gina started, which was grit and resilience. It is far more to do with grit and resilience than it is to do with your ability to memorize and spew things out and get good marks in an exam. And so to change that culture around research, to sort of focus in on things like motivation and grit and resilience, that's part of something. If it's in any way reassuring, there are a higher number of faculty who recognize that those are actually the more important attributes and not necessarily your marks. So if that gives you any kind of reassurance going forward, we're working on that.
Thank you. And Eileen, I'm just going to talk about process and outcome goals as we go along, and that's something else to keep in mind. So motivation, we all experience it. I think this past year being isolated to some degree, some people more, some people less. It's affected our motivation. We don't go to class. We don't see, like, you know, researcher managers and professors. So there's anxiety and frustration. And so I experience it. I expect most of us do. One of the main strategies with this kind of pressure that we have is to conduct a system of downloading it with some big projects that we have to download. And this means putting things on paper, putting them in your computer system. So typing them out, getting them out of your head. Our heads aren't meant for long-term prolonged storage. We have limited capacity. Use that capacity as best as we can. So get it out of your head, write it down, divide it into smaller pieces that are doable. So don't try to tackle big projects, and then do a step at a time. Sticky notes work pretty well for this. Some people like to visualize the steps in a project. A good reason is that you can take sticky notes and you can put them on a sheet of paper, you can cover them up, and then you don't think of it either. So out of sight, out of mind. Another way to increase motivation, we know, is through human contact. We learn with others, social constructivism in terms of a learning philosophy or theory. And so the approach here is to have a accountability buddy. And this is maintain contact regularly. So it would be great if you could find another student within your research area or another summer student that is working that you know on campus. And it's touching base. It's being able to explain your goals and some of your strategies, sharing it. This is what I'm accomplishing. And then next time you meet, accountability is talking about progress, what worked, what didn't, and changes, and hearing what they have to input. So it's really a sounding board, which can help increase the motivation. Another way, I guess, in helping with motivation is to develop some habits. So this is a 2-day rule that helps you to form habits, I guess. And what this states is that under no conditions should you ever miss doing a habit 2 days in a row. So you're always permitted to miss a day, which feels good. The next day you need to do it again. So that's called the 2-day rule. Other strategies to help with the motivation for people who want to cut down on sweets. Let's say pick me. The idea would be to use your environment and not have any sweets in the house. So have everything out of your environment. That will help. Your environment also can include your digital devices. So you could use your environment there to help you use your schedules. You could have a to-do list. You could have a goal app that helps you see your goals, which leads to looking at your goals. For motivation again, hopefully, if you're challenged, just keep those goals in mind. Maybe they're posted on the wall, which would help. And then rewards. What is it that you like to have as your reward? Pushing through procrastination. Again, this is something I think that most of us experience. So procrastination really is getting small or less important tasks done, or spending your time at the expense of working on more important, larger tasks. So again, normalize it. Many of us do it different times. We may not do it this time, but we'll hit a brick wall sometimes in life and test out our procrastination ability. And again, it's stress and our productivity takes a hit. And I think it is a little bit about what you do when you procrastinate. At least I want to feel good. So the one answer about what you do is work on less important tasks. This is a strategy, and it's okay because you're still making progress. You just have to really be careful in terms of, you know, how much you avoid what you're trying to avoid. So a couple of strategies. One is called Strive for 5. This strategy says that you will spend 5 minutes on whatever task it is that you want to accomplish, maybe that you don't. And usually what happens is when you say I'm spending 5 minutes, the going gets good and you might keep going. And 5 minutes isn't a lot of time to commit, even if you don't want to do something. Eat the frog first. If it's your job to eat a frog, it's best to do it first thing in the morning. And if it's your job to eat 2 frogs, it's best to eat the biggest one first. So this says, do what you don't want to do, the least one, what you want to do first. And there's some merit to this in terms of making sure you devote time or dedicate time. A little bit of the trade-off is that using your time may be the best part of your day for that task. So not everyone's a morning person, so doing it first thing in your day may just not be productive for you. Another very solid approach, and I think there's, you know, much kind of study backing on this, is when you chunk up your study time or work time into smaller pieces. So not marathon sessions. This is called a Pomodoro method of time management. And it goes in 30-minute cycles. You work intently for 25 minutes and you take a short break, a 5-minute break. You work intently for 25 minutes, take a break. So you follow these cycles. During the time you're working, that's the time where you really want to focus. You put your cell phone in another room, you turn it off, you let family and friends know, no, I can't visit, I'll get back to you, you know, within my five-minute period. So this is very productive. Another good benefit of this is someone that has back problems or any kind of pains. In this approach, basically you have to get up. Usually you go do something healthy, go use the washroom, go get a bite to eat, check your social media, but move and get up. So that can help. Oh, sorry about that. There is an app known as Flora, and this is a Pomodoro timer. When you start a task and set the timer, there's a seedling of a tree planted. If you don't touch your phone for a half hour, it grows into a tree. So who wants to kill the little trees? And you can do it with friends too. Another thing is this concept of using a second brain. And this is, like I said, that really none of our brains are meant like a computer hard drive for large storage. It's not designed that way. So use tools. Evernote, OneNote, to keep your notes from a class and your research papers, your findings. So use some of these tools, your telephone or your cell phone. And what happens is you decrease the cognitive load, what's being demanded, and you can increase your capacity for other things. And this is where I just wanted to mention, Eileen, is something that might help in this, or that I guess is kind of shown to make a difference, is we know we have an outcome goal. So this is running a half marathon in the summer or in August, achieving some mark on a class or classes, focusing on what you can do. So paying attention to that. So process goals, like I'm going to run with my group for three times a week. I'm going to work out 5 days a week. If we focus on those things, it takes us closer to our goal. And it's kind of a good way to maybe shift your attention to, what you can control. And often what we know is if you're doing these things, it really does help. It helps you lead towards that goal. So it doesn't change the fact, but it can kind of shift some of the pressure maybe off of where your focus is if it's unhelpful. This is something I'm big into, is the monkey and the monk mind. And so in our brains, we have this little monkey that's dancing around, running around. And every stimulus they find is they want to do something pleasurable. If it's fun, I'm going to do it, right? So not even thinking, immediate gratification. The wise or the monk mind is what intervenes and what we want to develop in order to break that cycle. Some of the ways that you can have this monk mind, or the strategies that we're talking about, critically thinking about, stopping to think about whether I want to do something, productivity, reflecting, mindfulness is something, as I said, very important to me. And you can see this book, Think Like a Monk, by Jay Shetty. He was a Buddhist monk for about 3 years and then decided to go and help teach the findings that he found. So if you want to investigate mindfulness, it helps with focus, emotional regulation, stress. You can contact me if you want more information. And there's examples like a breathing square to help you regulate and do deep breathing. I've got 2 more areas, so I'm going to continue on and we can see questions later. Finding time for daydreaming, and this is helping with creativity and with learning. So Barbara Oakley, fairly well renowned in terms of researcher in learning. She talked about kind of 2 different ways of thinking, and one is focused, and this is where you're fixated, you're concentrating on accomplishing a task. So it's kind of a deep versus breadth approach. The other type of thinking is when you let your mind go and you let it kind of in a relaxed state. And this is where kind of the connections go on, some of the creativity that might go on in your head. So you're making these kind of connections. Your thinking has moved from one part of the brain kind of to another. So giving it an example is that focused thinking, if you're trying to find your way through a forest, is paying attention to that path. Watching, is there a branch across my path? Am I coming up against poison ivy? Are there branches leaning into me? So really focusing. Diffuse thinking is if you can imagine being in that forest and not so fixated on the path. So it's not so much goal driven. So you might look around, you might have a camera and get some really good shots. You might look around and see some of the wildlife. So you're much more kind of on the holistic level. Not sure if you're familiar with Salvador Dali. I love his art. What he is said to have done is that he would sit in a chair in a relaxed state and hold his keys in his hand. And once those keys hit the ground, that's when he'd start some kind of new creation or some kind of new innovation. So he let his mind wander and it hit the ground. And Thomas Edison is said to have done this well. I think, but ball bearings may be in his hand. Change. This is the one thing we can count on in life. I think most of us have experienced that, for sure, everyone in this past year. On the flip side is, of course, that change and growth can be very good. So growth mindset, again, which maybe half of you are familiar with, is Carol Dweck, is a researcher, and she, again, did lots of studies, largely on students, quite a few. And there was kind of 2 different mentalities or attitudes, mindsets. And one is really that growth. We know that our intelligence and our skills, we can grow them, we can change them throughout life. Fixed mindset means we can't do anything about it. We got what we got. If we don't have it, then we're not going to get it. We're only good at some things. Again, being in education, a student and a learner, we know about neuroplasticity, so we know our brains can change and the neural pathways. Just a few traits. A fixed mindset will avoid failure because you'll look dumb. Effort, it means that you're not smart. If someone does better than you or a colleague, it's a threat. Feedback is viewed negatively. So I'm just talking about the fixed ones. And of course, on the other one, effort is good. Learning from someone else is good. The feedback I get can improve me. Those are kind of the different approaches. And growth mindset tend to do much better in terms of learning and other aspects. Looking for ways to improve, recovering from failure. Those are some other examples. I'm just going to move on because I'm close to the end. I think what I'll do is I'll send this information as very specific examples off to Meryl, and then she can circulate it. So these are the points that I covered, 8 points.
Thank you. I'd be happy to.
Okay. Some of the main takeaways is own your time. It's yours, something you could do with. Use some of the strategies and tools, try them. They may not all work. You need to stick with one, try it, stick with one for a while. Daydream. And know that change, I guess, failure, challenges is good. That concludes the information part that I have. And I'll open it up to questions.
Thanks very much, Gina. That was phenomenal. I know that the last thing you said was that, you know, a failure or things that happen, that is probably the number one thing that students who are working as research assistants tell me consistently, in that was the first big hurdle that they had to understand and to really kind of take in that research is not linear. It is absolutely not like what happens in a lab, in a class. Actual research, you don't know necessarily what's going to happen. You don't necessarily know the results. You could have things that go wrong, and so building those skill sets around, you know, coming back and trying again and again and again is one of the most difficult parts of being a researcher. But it's really key, and the faster that you can do that, the better. And just remember that your faculty supervisor knows it too. They went through that process. They know that actual research and being out in the field and you know, things happen all the time that are completely unexpected, and learning to roll with things is one of the first skill sets you can really work on it and be mindful about building.
I can relate to that one. And this is talking about my actual master's thesis. What I came up against, I looked at how students solve problems, and I wanted to be able to understand what they were doing to be able to give them the proper advice. I couldn't do it. It was hard. And, you know, actually it was proving that it's not easy to do, but the whole way along, it was like, huh? So that was a good lesson, even at writing my thesis stage, that I had to learn.
No, it's absolutely true. Does anyone have any questions? Feel free to either pop them in the chat or unmute yourself and ask the questions. Jack had to run, but he said it was really helpful and interesting. So it's thank you to Gina. Yeah, there are absolutely some. I'm going to pause in the recording as well. Thank you very much, Gina, for being with us today. I'll stop the recording and then people can ask any questions that they might have.
Awesome.